Okay everyone, let me tell you about the story of King Kong vs Godzilla. Once upon a time, there was an American movie writer named Willis O'Brien. O'Brien wanted to make a new King Kong movie for the 60s, except this time Kong would be fighting the Frankenstein monster. Yes, that one. But the cost of this stop-motion enterprise proved too much for most American studios of the time, so our hero O'Brien decided to look abroad for financial support. And so he found Toho, who was also interested in bringing Godzilla back for the studio's 30th anniversary. So they bought the script from him and asked Shinichi Sekizawa to rewrite it, replacing Frankenstein with Godzilla. And this is where it gets good. The fact that this movie exists is, for me, a victory in itself. Keep in mind that back in 1962, Godzilla wasn't the pop culture tentpole it is today, while King Kong was already the most famous movie monster of all. In fact, it was this very movie that would start Godzilla's ascension into stardom. Here begins what is considered by most fans to be the golden age of the character, when the combined talents of director Ishiro Honda, composer Akira Ikifubi, producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, special effects technician Eiji Tsubaraya, and writer Shinichi Sekizawa would bring us 4 absolute classics of the genre. And all begins with King Kong vs Godzilla, a soft reboot of the franchise. This movie does not completely ignore the previous one, but is pretty different in tone, being way more satirical and lighthearted, dictating the course of the flicks from now on. This change is shown in the very first scene of the movie, which opens with a crappy edutainment TV show about evolution and stuff. Said show is sponsored by Pacific Pharmaceuticals, and its head of advertising, Mr. Taco, is not impressed by... Wait a minute! It's that guy! From the first movie! Anyway, right from the bat, you should be able to tell a tiny itsy bitty detail of the movie. It was horribly preserved. The original 35mm negative of the movie was cut in 1970 to be screened on TV, and the highest quality version of these scenes were lost. Through the years, most releases of the movie combined the 35mm originals with a 16mm copy, resulting in a very inconsistent quality to say the least. Some 35mm pieces of the movie were later rediscovered and used for the Laserdisc release, but the quality remained mostly uneven, if superior. In 2016, however, a 4K restoration of a complete 35mm search of the film was aired on Japanese television, marking the first time in decades anyone saw the damn thing in good shape. This version, however, is still unavailable for the general public, so I'm stuck with this copy that keeps jumping between acceptable DVD quality to awful VHS looking greenish blue mess. It's distracting, as you've noticed. Back to the plot. Taco is discussing with a scientist about a bunch of plants with narcotic effects which he found while on a trip to a remote island on the Pacific. The science also mentions the island being inhabited by a giant monster. This is all Taco needs to hear in order to send 2 of his employees, Sakurai and Kinsaburo, to track down and capture the creature in a publicity stunt to help with the company's books. Then Sakurai returns home to have dinner with his sister Fumiko and her boyfriend Fujita, but not before Fujita displays some of his suicidal tendencies in the apartment's balcony. Oh, and a new super wire he has been developing, but that's just an excuse to hang from the window. Also, Sakurai is jealous of her sister's boyfriend. His steak, right. Meanwhile, an American submarine is investigating a mysterious source of radiation in the Arctic Sea when it gets stuck in an iceberg. However, their attempts to free themselves only wake up Sakurai, Kinsaburo, and their interpret arrive at the island and are welcomed by Japanese people in blackface. At first, the natives don't want those two doofus wandering around their island, but they change their minds as soon as our heroes offer them gifts.
しょうがねえな。おまわりに見つかったって知らないよ。
Oh god, this movie only gets better. I watched it for the first time when I was a child, but I never forgot some of its scenes, especially this one. While this is happening, Godzilla finally breaks loose in the Arctic Sea. This shot almost makes the climax of the last movie worth. We finally get to see some action when Godzilla smashes some stuff while the army tries in vain to stop him. The Japanese government, however, isn't very preoccupied with it and decides to wait and see before making any move. The media starts a whole circus around Godzilla's return, which makes Mr. Tako very unhappy.
ただいまよりゴジラに関する特別番組をお送りいたします。北極海で復活したゴジラはベーリング海峡を一気に突破し、アリューシャン列島に沿って南下を続けております。
I love this guy. He pressures Sakurai and Kinsaburo on hurrying with their hunt for the monster. They spend a full day without any luck, but that's until later that night when the village is attacked by a giant octopus. Their pitiful human weapons are useless against the creature. But fear not, puny humans, because King Kong is here to save you. Kong starts throwing stuff at the octopus until he runs away, and then proceeds to drink some of the juice made from the red berry the scientist was demonstrating before. The monkey falls asleep and, is this normal? I mean, everyone is dancing around him and stuff, so I assume he must do it all the time, but I don't know. This is quite a god you have there who can hold his liquor. Wait a second, this whole dance ritual is reminding me of something. Nah, it's probably not. Once the creature has been captured, all everyone talks about is him for Mr. Tako's joy. He is so happy, in fact, that he decides to go congratulate his two subordinates himself. Then we get what I assume is a verbatim transcription of the pitch meeting for this movie.
ゴジラとキングコングとどっちが強いかしら。
バカ野郎、レスリングじゃねえよ。勝った。そのアイディア。キングコング対ゴジラ。
If I had to raise the single best aspect of this movie, besides the premise, of course, would be the humor. As I said, the movie has a satirical tone aimed towards media and its sensationalist tendencies. The movie knows the whole situation's absurd and silly. It is supposed to be like that. And the jokes themselves are pretty funny too while we're at it. Later movies would forget that the silliness and camp from this one were completely intentional and it touched with its theme, being goofy for goofiness sake with a borderline childish humor. But then again, later movies would not have the same crew of this one, or the same budget for that matter. Tako arrives at the ship transporting King Kong in it. One has to wonder how they managed to convince the natives to let them take away their drunken god. Almost at the same time, they are approached by a navy vessel. The crew of the ship tell Tako that Kong is basically smuggled goods, and therefore illegal in Japanese soil. Any destruction caused by him will be of Pacific Pharmaceuticals' responsibility, an information that doesn't fly very well with Tako. Back on land, Fujita arrives at home just to discover his girlfriend missing. Turns out, Fumiko had read about the ship Fujita was being sunk into the ocean near Hokkaido, so she went there to confirm if he was alive. After learning this, Fujita hurries to try and intercept her train. At the same time, Godzilla has landed, and is now heading to, you guessed it, the same place Fumiko is. The army decides not to act before receiving an official order from the Prime Minister. In the second scene from this movie that has Japanese officials deciding not to act on an imminent threat. I'm not sure on what the political climate in Japan was back in 1962, so I can't be sure, but this movie really feels like it is commenting on something. It reminds me a lot of Shin Godzilla at some points. Of course, that the actual satire of the movie is on media and sensationalism. But the scenes really left me thinking. Fumiko's train makes a sudden stop, and everyone is told to get off and run from Godzilla. Instead of running the direction everyone is running, Fumiko goes the other way, stumbling herself through the woods while Godzilla approaches. Lady, what are you doing? Fujita arrives just in time to take her out of sight. Not that she's very glad about it. I'm going to use this clip back and forth for now on. Kong awakes, and despite his hangover, manages to get free from the rat. Later, King Kong starts running amok through Japan, waving his arms in the air like an idiot. The green screen in this movie is... Everyone is either blue or have a bluish aura around them. This is slightly less noticeable during night scenes, but still noticeable. It's probably the most distracting quality of the movie, besides the whole preservation issue.
キングコングは依然北北西に向かって進んでおり、間もなく那須高原に達するものと思われます。重沢博士はキングコングが動物本能によってゴジラの存在を知り接近しているのであろう。
Thanks for making this distinction. I would not want to wrongly call King Kong a monster. Kong and Godzilla fight for the first time, while Toho and his minions watch from a distance. The monkey looks really impressed by his rival's atomic breath and decides to counter it by throwing rocks at him. I like how Kong actually behaves like a giant stupid animal. I mean, he sees a bigger animal he can't defeat and just walks away confused. To protect Tokyo, the army builds yet another electric fence around the city. Except this one actually works? Well, look at that. I mean, with Godzilla at least, Kong eats the wire like they are nothing. While in the city, King Kong takes a moment to stop a train car and kidnap Fumiko. Of course, no one wants to risk hurting her, so for a few moments, the army is halted, until Sakurai comes up with a plan. They load rockets with the narcotic berries from the island and shoot at the monster, while also playing his jungle drums to help putting the monster to sleep. It works, and soon Fumiko is safe and sound from Kong. But there's still the problem of both monsters still alive and in Japanese territory, so they do the reasonable thing and decide to... let them fight. Yeah, pretty much. So they use Fujita's magic wire to tie Kong into some balloons and drive him to Godzilla's location. When they finally meet, it's the carnage we've been waiting the whole movie to get. Kinda. At first, Kong just runs away and hides. After all, he's not an idiot. They fight for a while, rolling in the dirt and all, Kong doing the only thing he knows, but it turns out he's no match for Godzilla's ultimate weapon. No, not this one, this one. I would be lost if not for a quite literal Deus Ex Machina giving King Kong lightning powers. Yes, for real. I know they had already established his association with lightning and all earlier in the movie, but from this to him conducting electricity is kind of a huge leap. But it's just the leap that Kong needs to even the odds against Godzilla. And this is where the fight gets really good, with both of them smashing stuff and Kong being like, eat your vegetables, and Godzilla being hell no, and Kong is all pissed with him and stuff. Too bad the fight just ends with both of them rolling into the ocean. It's kind of a bummer, actually. Kong emerges victorious, however. Godzilla is nowhere to be seen, so he just walks away into the horizon, and we never see him again. Despite the enormous success of this flick, Toho has never made a follow-up of any kind. a sequel got into development very quickly, but was just as soon discarded for unknown reasons. There were plans for another brawl between the two in the 1990s, but this one also didn't happen, this time because of the cost of Kong's rights, which had become way too expensive. Then we get an heads up.
僕に言えることは、人間は改めて動植物の自然に適応する生命力に学ぶべきだ。
And the movie ends. It's hard to understate the importance of this movie for the franchise. Despite all its flaws, it not only put Godzilla into the popular consciousness for good, but its light-hearted mood and let them fight plot will define the series for pretty much the rest of its existence. And yes, you could say that there were times when this influence was mostly for the negative, but we're not judging the quality of the movie's impact here. This movie may not be the best Godzilla movie around, but it is indisputably a cornerstone of this series and deserves a spot in movie history just because of it. Next week, Godzilla faces off against Mothra. Why is he running like that?